Could be ulcerative or non-ulcerative. That's the first thing, right? And how can you classify them? Based on one manifestation, that is pain. If it's painless or painful ulcer, right? So, in both the sexes, we'll see first criteria, that is genito-ulcerative disease. So, in case of genito-ulcerative disease, you know what are the causative organisms. Okay, let's just first discuss this entire table, then we'll proceed. Can you name some diseases? Syphilis, chancroid, herpes, right? Lymphogranuloma venereum, caused by chlamydia. Any other infections you know that are caused by chlamydia? Chlamydia is causing infection based on its serotypes, right? Serovars. So A to B is causing ocular infections. D to K is causing oculogenital infections. And serovar L1, L2, L3 is causing this lymphogranuloma venereum, LGV. Okay. Then donovanosis. It is caused by Klebsiella granulomatis. Where have you heard the term Klebsiella? In Enterobacterials. But Klebsiella differs from this Klebsiella because this Klebsiella has certain gene that the other Klebsiella that you have been studying lacks. Okay. The name of that gene is 4E gene. Then urethritis. Urethritis can be again classified into gonococcal or non-gonococcal. So as the name suggests, you can tell gonococcal means caused by Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Is Neisseria a commensal flora? It could be a commensal in female genital tract. So whenever you see laboratory diagnosis of gonorrhea, it's more specific in case of males. Okay, you have to differentiate it from the commensal Neisseria. Then non-gonococcal urethritis. What is it? You know what is urethritis, right? So again, in non-gonococcal urethritis, most common cause would be chlamydia. Okay. Then what are other organisms? Ureaplasma, mycoplasma, or even virus. Which virus is it? Herpes simplex virus. Which? One or two? Two. Then Candida albicans is what? A fungus. Yeast-like fungus. Then Trichomonas vaginalis. What is it? Then again in both the sexes, what can you see? You can see genital tuberculosis. You can see anorectal lesions. So now when you are talking about anorectal lesion, we are talking about rectus, that is infection there could be caused by proctitis. This is again sexually transmitted. HSV, gonococcus or chlamydia trachomatis. Okay, or anogenital warts that are by human papilloma virus. This can be seen in male or female sexes both. Then what can you see? Local manifestations of again genital tract infections based on the organs. In females, what you will see? Vulvovaginitis involves the external and vagina, exterior and the vagina. What can you see here? How will you differentiate between these three? If you see the patient of vaginitis, what vaginosis per to say, what you will see? It could be because of bacterial vaginosis, trichomoniasis or candidiasis. Now you have to differentiate them whenever the patient comes to you. Okay, then mucopurulent cervicitis. What is the difference? Below uterus, what is there? What is this? Cervix, then vagina, then vulva. So you remember the sequence, right? Then PID. What is PID? As the name suggests, pelvic inflammatory disease. So whatever pelvic organs are there, what are there? Endometrium. Endometrium is internal lining of the uterus. Then salpingitis, oophorytis, ovaries. So all of these are involving female reproductive tract, right? Then Extension to the peritoneum can lead to peritonitis, pelvic abscesses and perihepatitis. So when you see this PID along with perihepatitis, what can you call this syndrome? It has a name. It is known by the name of Fitzhugh-Gerald syndrome. Okay, Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome. Okay, when you see PID with perihepatitis in the question, you have to tell Fitzhugh syndrome. Then what could be the cause of PID again? Any gynecological intervention, okay, or in case of pregnancy or postpartum period after labor, okay. Then what could be in the males? Males have prostate, prostatitis, epididymitis, orchitis, right? Any virus which can cause orchitis? Certain other STIs that do not cause any local lesions but cause systemic diseases. What are they? You know about this. These are the viruses. There are HIV, HBV and HCV. Okay. So this is all you have to know about. This is all you have to remember. How can you diagnose them? When the patient comes to you, you will see the local lesions. You will see if it's painless or painful. You will check for any lymphadenopathy is there or not. If there are two things available to you in the question also about the genito-ulcer lesion, ulcerative lesion or non-ulcerative, painful or painless lymphadenopathy, right? How will you diagnose them? Based on these two characteristics. And then you will provide the syndromic management to this patient, right? About syndromic kits, you will study further in ComMed also, but that is how these STIs are treated. Now, okay, let's see what are the comparison. Let's see the comparison. What is the shortest incubation period you can see here? It's in case of a virus. These four causative organisms, they are bacterias. Only this is the virus. What virus is it? This is herpes simplex virus 2. What is the incubation period? 2 to 7 days. Now, they are all capable of causing ulcers. Some are causing single ulcer, some are causing multiple ulcers. But if patient is immunocompromised, the organism which can cause single ulcer is capable of causing multiple ulcers also in case of immunocompromised patients, right? So it does not actually tell you a lot, but what do you have to see? You have to see that if it's a painless ulcer. Painless ulcer you can see in 3 cases. What are these 3 cases? Syphilis, LGV and donovanosis. These are all painless ulcers, right? Now you have to see what is there in lymphadenopathy, if it's tender or non-tender. So in case of syphilis, you can see lymphadenopathy is painless. Bilateral painless non-indurated lymphadenopathy in case of syphilis. So in syphilis, painless ulcer, painless lymphadenopathy. What happens in LGV? Ulcer is painless, but lymphadenopathy is painful, right? Mostly unilateral. You can tell that LGV has painful lymphadenopathy. And in case of donovanosis, you can see pseudobubo. How will you differentiate it? It will be soft in touch. Why? Because it is subcutaneous swelling. It is not actually a lymph node swelling. Okay? So in case of painless donovanosis, you have to check out the pseudobubo. Do not get confused within these two. So how to differentiate? If here it is also painless, here it is also painless. In case of donovanosis, you will see that these ulcers are beefy red and they are actively bleeding when you touch it. Okay. So here you can see the single indurated ulcer. It is clean. You cannot see any blood when you touch it. Okay, that's how you differentiate. Now coming to painful genital ulcer. Painful genital herpetic ulcers will be bilateral tiny vesicular ulcers. So this is very easy to tell. When you see HSV ulcers, they are tiny vesicular ulcers, right? But in chancroid, again what you will see, they could also be multiple, but they will be purulent and could bleed easily. Same thing is happening with this donovanosis. How to differentiate? In case of chancroid, there will be a lymphadenopathy which could be painful or could be painless, but there will be bubo formation, which is a true bubo formation. Okay, this is how you differentiate between these ulcerative diseases. Any confusion about these 5? Now can you tell if there is a painless, easily bleed on touch ulcer and it is painless, there is subcutaneous swelling is there, but it is painless. What is it? It's a donovanosis. If there are multiple lesions, purulent lesions, but painful unilateral lymphadenopathy is there, what is it? You should ask one question, if it is painful also or not. Did I mention it is painful? Painful ulcer with painful lymphadenopathy. What is it? Chancroid. So you understood what is it. Okay, then coming to first, what is it? Syphilis. Pallidum name from this refers to what? Pale staining. What kind of staining do you require to stain Treponema pallidum? Yeah, so they belong to which? They belong to spirochetes. They are spirally coiled bacteriums, right? They can easily break the barrier and readily invade your skin. So whenever you are treating this patient or touching the ulcer, as a doctor you should always wear gloves. There are 2 kinds of diseases that you can acquire from the patient just by touching these ulcers. One is syphilis, second is herpes. Okay. So whatever dermats they are treating these patients, you might lesion on the hands of these doctors. What are they known as? They are known as syphilitic or herpetic whitlows. Okay. That is why you should always touch with the gloved hands. Okay, what is the incubation period? 10 to 90 days. Okay. What is the clinical course of syphilis? Primary syphilis. In primary syphilis, what happens? There is a single painless papule. It could be ulcerated and indurated, right? Covered by thick exudate rich in spirochetes. What is the common site you will find here? It could be on the labia or penis. Then spontaneous healing within 4 to 6 weeks could occur, but also it could progress with what? Towards secondary syphilis if left untreated. What will happen to the lymphadenopathy? There will be painless, firm, non-suppurative, often bilateral lymphadenopathy in these cases that will persist for months. Okay. Syphilis can also spread from blood transfusion, direct contact, vertical contact, right? What happens in secondary syphilis? You will see such skin rashes, right, on skin and mucosal membranes. Then what else can you see? Slowly disease starts developing granulomatous lesions. In which areas? Especially in the areas of hairy growth along with the sweat. Intertriginous areas such as perianal region, vulva and scrotum. So these are the kind of lesions they will be producing. Okay. Then comes the latent syphilis. What happens in latent syphilis? There is no active symptom, but microbiological latency is not there. It's slowly developing into tertiary syphilis, which is a more severe form of the disease. What happens? What happens in case of tertiary syphilis? Neurosyphilis or cardiovascular syphilis. So it involves two important systems of your body. What are those systems? CNS and how does it involve CNS? What will you see? You will see chronic meningitis, right? So you will see meningeal symptoms. And in case of cardiovascular, what you will see? Aortic dilatation. So if you see that a person had a history of syphilis, lifelong history of syphilis, and suddenly this person dies of bleeding, sudden death is caused by cardiovascular syphilis. Why? Because of rupture of this dilated aorta. Okay? This is the most severe complication. Mother to fetus transmission. How can you tell by the look of a child that this child has transmitted syphilis from mother to itself? Syphilitic rhinitis, okay, vesicular eruptions like this, bilateral destruction of these long bones, Wimberger's sign is seen in this region. What is this region? You guys studied anatomy. What is this region? This is a metaphyseal region of the long bone, right? And hepatosplenomegaly. In case of late what are the late signs of congenital syphilis? What do you call it? You call it Hutchinson's triad. What do you see there? You will see overcrowding of teeth, mulberry molars, you call it. Okay, the teeth will show you this typical sign. When you see this kid, when you see such patient, you will understand by the look of it's very easy to find these mulberry molars. Okay, they'll have deafness, sensory neural deafness they will have, and they could also have keratitis, interstitial keratitis. Okay, they might have a saddle nose. These all are the late signs of, these are all the signs of late syphilis. Okay. How to diagnose syphilis? With the help of dark ground microscopy, you told me, with silver impregnation, right? Then there are two kinds of methods that you can use for this, Levadity and Fontana stain. But what are we actually doing? You are using serological methods to diagnose. What are these two kinds of methods? You are using non-treponemal and treponemal tests. In case of non-treponemal test, what are you using? You are using antibodies that are detected by using cardiolipin antigen. Where do you acquire this cardiolipin antigen from? Bovine or beef heart, you can take this cardiolipin antigen. It has cross reactivity with this antibodies. Okay, this is a non-treponemal test, you call it. And in case of treponemal test, you are using T pallidum antigens. Where do you acquire these T pallidum antigens from? For that, what you will have to do? Culture. And is it non-cultivable, right? So what is most commonly done? Also to use for screening and disease prognosis, we are seeing non-treponemal test. Any names you can suggest me? Very good, VDRL and RPR and TRUST, right? What is VDRL? Flocculation test. What is the full form of VDRL? Where is this laboratory? New York, okay. What is one advantage of VDRL over RPR? CSF can also be tested in case of VDRL. Okay. These are certain non-treponemal tests we were talking about. Then this is how you see the VDRL and this is how you have to read the VDRL. This is non-reactive. This is weakly reactive and this is, where do you observe VDRL and RPR? Naked eyes, okay. And these are treponemal test. What are we doing here? We are seeing immobilization of the antigen. We are seeing antibody absorption, agglutination, heme agglutination, particle agglutination. We are doing what? Antibody antigen reaction in this. Where are we acquiring this antigen from? From the treponemal species, and we are taking serum of the patient and checking for antigen. How is HIV helping with the syphilis? Why these two diseases co-occur? Why is it so common to find them together? Because of the lesions, because of the syphilitic lesions, it is very easy to acquire HIV, right? That's how it is helping the disease to progress. Okay. How do you treat it? Coming to chancroid. What is chancroid? Painful or painless? Painful. Painless lymphadenopathy or painful? Painful. Okay. What is the specimen you will take in case of all these genital-ulcerative diseases? You will take swabs. From the ulcers, you will take swabs from the base of the lesion. Or you can also take the tissues and rub it between the two slides, crush it between the two slides, right? In case of swab, what kind of swabs will you take? What is the material? Will you use cotton swabs? You will use Dacron or rayon swabs. Why? Because these Dacron or rayon swabs, they are chemically inert. They will not inhibit microbial growth. Cotton has certain organic material, fats, lipids, etc. is there imbibed within the cotton, right? So you have to take Dacrons. What will you see? Haemophilus ducreyi. What kind of organism is it? It's a gram-negative Cocobacillus. Always occurs in group of chains. Also known as school of fish. Why school of fish? Fish in the group, when they swim, they are known as school of fish. So that's how it appears, right? You might have seen Finding Nemo, and that movie they have shown how the, okay, or it is also known as railroad track appearance. You can culture this H. ducreyi with the help of selective medium and enriched medium such as chocolate agar with antibiotics which will inhibit the growth of other organisms, right? What is the optimum condition? You have to provide it with the anaerobic or environment and prolonged incubation period. You have to provide it so that it could grow. So what will you do? You will again go for serological tests that are available, or you can go for PCR. Coming to genital herpetic ulcers. Can you see this? They are multiple, vesicular in nature, right? And it is painful on touching. What kind of lymphadenopathy does it show? Painful. Okay. So it's a virus. What will you do? You will take, whenever you are staining it with Zank preparation, what will you see? You will see inclusion bodies. What are these inclusion bodies? They are the protein aggregates. They are left behind after viruses do their job. They are the pathognomics in case of viruses for simple microscopy, because you cannot go for electron microscopy all the time for the viruses, right? So you will see this multinucleated giant cells or inclusion bodies, or else you can do PCR or antigen reaction by ELISA. LGV, we discussed about chlamydia, serovars L1, L2, L3 are causing LGV. LGV has what kind of ulcer? Painless ulcer but painful lymphadenopathy. So in this case, you will see such vesicles on penis or vulva. They are painless, but the bubo, which is the second stage of the ulcer. First stage is this, you will see such ulcers, then it will also involve the lymph nodes. Then there could be a fistula formation. Can you see the spirulent nature? Inside, these could be forming the fistulas, okay, and connecting other internal organs. What happens in the third stage? Some of them heal and form strictures, okay, or even lead to giant granulomatous formations on the exterior organs, okay. So in case of hypertrophy of vulva, it is known as ischiomain, okay, and it can also lead to elephantiasis of vulva or scrotum. Where else is the elephantiasis seen? Filariasis, okay. Why is biopsy contraindicated? What was happening in the second stage of ulcer of LGV? It was forming fistulas. So if you puncture, what will happen? The organism will start growing there and can lead to stricture formations. Okay, so biopsy is contraindicated to inhibit the risk of sinus tract formation. What do you use always for any chlamydial infection? You always go for nucleic acid amplification test. Okay, that is the gold standard for chlamydia, NAT. What about donovanosis? Where was it discovered? Donovanosis was discovered in the world in Chennai, India by Charles Donovan. So why was it named donovanosis? Because he found these Donovan bodies which are peculiar to these ulcers from caused by which organism? Initially this organism had the name Callimatobacterium granulomatis. Later it was named with Klebsiella granulomatis. Okay. What do you see in this case? You will see this giant macrophage filled with these Klebsiella that show bipolar staining, and this peculiar observation right here is known as Donovan body, which is seen in donovanosis. Which is other significant thing about donovanosis, that it bleeds on touching, right? Is it painful or painless? Painless. Does it have lymphadenopathy? This is how the ulcer. See, do you have to does it require need to touch it? You can just see that there is this bleeding occurring, right? So painless papule beefy red ulcer that bleeds readily when touched. Okay, but it also shows pseudobubos, which is subcutaneous abscess but not a true bubo. Okay. What is the specimen you are taking? You are taking swab or piece of granulation tissue. What are the Donovan bodies that you are seeing here? How are you staining it? With GMSA or right stain? What are the Donovan bodies? It's a macrophage filled with capsulated bacilli, which looks like these. These are all short, small bacilli. Okay, they are non-motile. Is it difficult to remember? Klebsiella is non-motile, capsulated and gram-negative. How can you culture them? Egg yolk medium or on any culture cells. Hep2 cell lines. What is Hep2 cell line? It's a variant of HeLa cell lines. What is HeLa cell line? Why are we using HeLa cell lines? They are actually cancerous cell which can divide on their own, right? So we are using them for viral culture, viral isolation, HPE, histopathological findings in case of viruses, chlamydia, etc. So HeLa, what does HeLa stand for? HeLa stands for the name of the person, abbreviations of the name of the lady who had the cervical cancer from where these cell lines were acquired. Okay, and it was done in unethical way. Without her knowledge, these cells were sent to the laboratory for growing, right? So this was unethical, but it has proven to be helpful to laboratories. What should they have done for acquiring these cell lines? They should have taken a permission, consent from the lady. Okay, that's what you study in ETCOM. What do you study? What are the 4 pillars of ETCOM? Autonomy, very good. Autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence and justice. So this could have been applied in case of HeLa before acquiring her cervical cancer cells. Okay, it was just an example. Okay, there is one molecular method that will differentiate the Klebsiella granulomatis from other Klebsiella species, that is PCR. What are you seeing here? 4E gene. Okay. Now what about urethritis? Can be differentiated as gonococcal or non-gonococcal. So when you talk about gonococcal, what is this? Neisseria gonorrhoeae, non-capsulated gram-negative kidney-shaped diplococcus. What about Neisseria meningitis? What about Neisseria meningitis? How does it look? Also gram-negative, also diplococcus, lens-shaped, right? Half-moon shaped. What are the virulence factors? Whenever you have seen the pictures of gonococcus, they don't show these factors, pili or fimbriae. These gonococcus, diplococcus, they actually have fimbriae on them. Okay, so that is to help them adhere to the host cells and prevent the phagocytosis. Okay, this is the virulence factor for gonococcus. Then there are outer membrane proteins which will help with local infection or disseminated infections. So porine protein B1A strains that are seen in disseminated gonococcal infections, and 1B strains, they are seen in local genital infections. They can also have all these factors. What are they? Opacity associated proteins. Help with adhesion to the neutrophils. Transferrin binding protein, lactoferrin binding proteins. It is all to acquire nutrition factors, to survive phagocytosis, to fight the immune defense mechanism. These are all virulence factors of gonococcus, right? IgA proteases. IgA because the prostatic and cervical secretions, they could have IgA in them. They are present, secretory antibodies are present there. So these organisms are capable of causing disease because they have immunoglobulin A proteases, they break down these antibodies, okay, and lipo-oligosaccharides. These are all virulence factors of gonococcus. What are the clinical manifestations? In males, you don't have to mug these things up. This you can just remember by remembering the organs that are there in the reproductive tract, right? Acute urethritis, what will happen? Purulent urethral discharge. Very important. Why? Because gonorrhea also means flow. Rhea means flow, right? So, if you ask the patient, he'll tell you that he always observes. In this case, he'll observe the purulent urethral discharge. Okay? What are other complications to acute urethritis? It will involve other organs of the male reproductive tract system. Okay? In case of females, what will happen? Vulvovaginitis. Okay. This we have discussed, Fitzhugh-Curtis syndrome. What was the causative organism? If it's given you in the question paper that patient was suffering with Neisseria gonorrhoeae, developed PID later, and it also involves the perihepatic inflammation. What does it tell you? It is a Fitzhugh-Curtis phenomena. Okay. Again, in both the sexes, what can it cause? Anorectal, pharyngeal and ocular gonorrhea. Ocular gonorrhea किसमें हो सकता है? Neonates में हो सकता है. What else can be there in neonates? Any other bacteria? Okay. What else? What is the most common commensal of urinary tract? So, you can say E. coli also. What else? What else? Which streptococcus? Group B streptococcus, very good. Any meningococcal meningitis organism that causes meningitis in neonates and elderly? That she told. Huh? Listeria, very good. What about viruses? ठीक है, we'll study that in this lecture only. Pregnant women में क्या हो सकता है? Prolonged rupture of membranes, premature delivery, sepsis and chorioamnionitis. Amnionitis in case of neonates. Okay. Rest other things, you know, we discussed that you have to take the urethral swab and cervical swab in women, in urethral swab in men. You have to use the Dacron or Rayon swabs, and in case of chronic urethritis, you have to apply for this prostatic massage to the patient and acquire this morning drop of secretion and do the laboratory diagnosis. What is the culture media present for this? Anaerobic medium, Stewart's transport medium, Amy's medium or Gonopark system. Okay. This is how you will see the gonococcus. Diplococci, gram-negative bacilli, could be intracellular, could be Extracellular. Okay. Just remember one name of the selective medium, Thayer-Martin medium, which we use for gonococcal. Gonococci are catalase and oxidase both positive. You can culture it on Thayer-Martin medium, capable of fermenting glucose and only glucose. In case of don't talk. Automated system mein you can use Malditov for accurate diagnosis. PCR, you know about it. What about gonococcal, non-gonococcal urethritis? Chlamydia is the most common, then ureaplasma or mycoplasma or Candida, Trichomonas. Okay. Or else viruses, herpes simplex. This you know about. This is the difference between gonococcal and non-gonococcal urethritis. In case of gonococcal, the onset is very short. This will take about 2 days to develop the symptom. The symptom is very, it gives an easy clue about the diagnosis because the patient will come with purulent secretions. In case of non-gonococcal urethritis, you will see mucus to mucopurulent. Okay. What is the complication here? Polyarthritis and endocarditis and water can perineum. What is water can perineum? It's a radiological finding. Okay. What happens in the Reiter's syndrome? In case of NGU, how to remember about Reiter's syndrome? Can't see, can't pee and can't climb. Why? Can't see, conjunctivitis. Can't pee, urethritis. Can't climb because he has arthritis and mucosal lesions. So when it's given to you that the patient has these symptoms, conjunctivitis, urethritis and arthritis, and has a history of more than 1 week of these clinical manifestations, what could be the causative organisms among the following? Don't go for gonococcus. Go for either of these. Okay. What will be on the top? Chlamydia. What about diagnosis? Case of gonococcus, you go for gram staining and culture on Thayer-Martin medium. But in case of NGU, for chlamydia you are doing NAT. For Trichomonas, detection of trophozoites, right? How will you detect these trophozoites? You have to take care that not to kill the organism. If you are centrifuging urine sample, what will happen? It will be killed. So you will not be able to figure out the motility or anything, right? What kind of motility does Trichomonas show? It shows tumbling motility. Okay. What happens in the case of Candida? Budding yeast cells, gram stain, gram positive budding yeast cells. Okay. Chlamydia we discussed in the beginning. It's an obligate intracellular organism. So why do we differentiate chlamydia from virus? Initially, chlamydia was thought to be a virus, but we are differentiating chlamydia from viruses because, okay, these are all the properties. That's why we thought that it could be a virus because chlamydia was intracellular. It could not be grown on the artificial medium. It grows in the cell lines just like viruses or embryonated egg or animals, just like viruses. And it is filtrable. It passes through the bacterial filters, right, like viruses, and could produce intracytoplasmic inclusions. So we thought this is virus. But what differentiates them from viruses? Because they had both RNA or DNA. Viruses only has either RNA or either DNA. They have cell wall similar to that of gram-negative bacteria. Okay, they could multiply by binary fission. and they are susceptible to wide range of antibacterials. So then we came to a conclusion that chlamydia is a bacteria. Okay. Let's discuss a bit about chlamydial life cycle. It appears in two forms. What are the two forms? Elementary body and reticulate body. What is elementary body? It's an infective form, right? E for infection, E for I. Just remember it like this with the how you enunciate this term. E for elementary and I for infection. Just remember it like this, okay? Then R for reticulate and R for replication. What happens after the uptake of chlamydial elementary body? It's an infective form. It will transfer into reticulate cells. Then it will undergo binary fission and develop more elementary bodies, and the infection will persist. Sometimes the chlamydia is trapped in this form, okay, which causes the persistent infection with aberrant reticulate body, and that is why you are able to see it on as a form of inclusion bodies in case of stains, when you stain them in the laboratory, these tissues, right? All of these manifestations could be there. We have discussed this before, that you have to name all the organs that are there in the male and female reproductive tracts. These are all the complications of all the organisms you are going to study today. What is this? It's a cell line, okay, McCoy cell line. What is this? This is how you can see the inclusion bodies caused by chlamydia. So these McCoy cell lines are derived from Idur, okay. You can culture them on, just like viruses, you can culture them on cell line cultures, but along with that also egg inoculation can be done. Okay, these are the cell line for choice, McCoy, HeLa, and this is the HeLa cell line affected with chlamydia trachomatis. But most sensitive and specific method for chlamydia is, what are other urogenital infections other than in case of NGU? Mycoplasma and ureaplasma. Okay, nothing more to detail about it. What about genital tuberculosis, you know? Or anybody just thinks that only TB can only cause pulmonary tuberculosis and no other organ? It can cause extrapulmonary tuberculosis, okay. Anorectal lesions we discussed in the beginning. These are the anogenital warts, HPV we were talking about. Vulvovaginitis was one thing that we have to discuss today. Refers to the inflammation of vaginal mucosa, that is vaginitis, and external genitalia vulva. So it involves both. Okay. So how will this woman present? Second last row. What will be the presenting symptom in case of vulvovaginitis? Abnormal discharge with or without itching and offensive odor. Three things are there. What is it? Abnormal discharge will be there, with or without odor, or with or without itching. Okay, what are the three differential diagnoses whenever the patient comes? What is it? One is fungus, the other one is parasite, the other one is bacteria. What is happening? pH gadbad ho gaya hai. Okay. Okay, let's discuss about BV. What is happening here? pH remains acidic most of the times, but here the pH goes more than 4.5. Then what happens? The good bacterium, the commensal flora, is taken over by the other anaerobic and other Gardnerella vaginalis, other bacterium which were not supposed to be there in higher ratio. So what happens? Malodorous, slightly increased discharge. thin white or white to grey in color. This is very like evident about what kind of infection is there. Just in case if there is thin white to grey discharge, you can tell that it is BV. In case of candidiasis, you will see thick and cheese-like discharge. Okay, and in case of trichomonial vaginitis, you will see profuse discharge, but it smells very bad and also has this typical symptom colpitis macularis, which will not be there in case of other two. Okay, so the strawberry appearance along with the bad odor and along with this kind of discharge, it tells you about the trichomonal vaginitis. But what is important to find out in laboratory? It's trophozoite, right? In case of candidiasis, you can tell there will be itching and irritation in this region. Okay. What about microscopy of both? Here you will see leukocytes, epithelial cells along with budding yeast cells with pseudohyphae. What does pseudohyphae tell? Pseudohyphae tells that there is active inflammation. Okay. Trichomonial mein you will see leukocytes and trophozoites are seen in these cases. About bacterial vaginosis, it's very important to find clue cells. What are clue cells? Clue cells are epithelial cells which are generally okay to see, like their margins are not obscured, but in case of infection, clue cells are the epithelial cells whose margins are obscured because of invasion of the bacteria. Okay, you will see this epithelial cells will be there in the swab as obscured margins with number of bacteriums. Okay, that's about it. We won't go into details of that. You will, this is how the trophozoite looks. Wet mount of fresh samples, that's where you can see the jerky motility and pus cells. Okay. We can also culture them. How do you culture them? Not your general culture, commercial culture media that is present in the laboratory. They have differential culture media specially designed for these organisms, and sometimes they are known as in pouch, so that you take the sample in OPD and inoculate into it. Okay, such culture media are also available. That is about it. Why does bacterial vaginosis happens? It happens because of increase in the concentration of these bacterium. Just remember Mobilincus, okay? Motile curved, gram negative, gram variable, anaerobic rod and Gardnerella vaginalis. These bacteriums. There is something called as Nugent score and Amsel's criteria also, which is used for diagnosing bacterial vaginosis. That depends on the score of bacterium. Okay, these bacterium. These are the clue cells. Can you see? This is the normal cell. What is this? A normal epithelial cell. What is this? Can you see the obscured margins of this cell because of bacterium? What else can be done in this case? We can perform WIP test. WIP test. What is WIP test? We put 10% solution of KOH and on what? On the secretions, and what will happen? It will give out a very fishy odor. Okay, that is about Nugent scoring. What are the other factors of Nugent scoring? You saw that vaginal discharge is there, one thing. Second, pH of vaginal discharge more than 4.5. Then 10% concentrated at KOH will give you fishy odor and presence of clue cells. So any three of the following are present, it means it is bacterial vaginosis. Okay. Candidiasis we discussed already. Cervicitis and all you know. These are the organisms I was telling you about that can cause PID. So PID is pelvic inflammatory disease. You discussed about gonorrhea, chlamydia, HSV, any other organisms that can cause PID? Genital mycoplasma, anaerobic organisms, E. coli, H. influenzae, group B streptococcus and staphylococcus. So when you think about PID, can all these organisms be transferred to the neonate during labor? Okay. Okay. About natal infections. You mentioned group B streptococcus, E. coli, listeria, Neisseria gonorrhoeae and chlamydia. In case of viruses, you did not mention about CMV, enterovirus, hepatitis B, HIV along with HCV. Okay. If asked in the question, what are the infections that could be transmitted through infected birth canal? For bacterium, you have this group of answers, and for viruses, these many viruses could be. Painless ulcer, location, glans penis, for the past 10 days, right? Unprotected sexual intercourse 3 weeks ago. So 3 weeks to 90 days could be an incubation period. Examination reveals also single hard indurated ulcer with clear margins and bilateral non-tender inguinal lymphadenopathy. Okay, that is primary syphilis. What about second one? Why secondary? Involves the rashes on palms and soles after this, and here too it's given, the answer is given. Don't have to think much about it. This is secondary syphilis. What about the third one? Chancroid. Why chancroid? Okay, it says that painful genital ulcer that bleeds on touch and has unilateral tender inguinal lymphadenopathy with fluctuation. So it's unilateral tender inguinal pathy. If it was non-tender, then donovanosis. Okay.